Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 805B, and today's date is October 30th, 2015, and the title of this episode is U.S. Special Forces are in Iraq and Syria to hide the Islamic State's true mission. Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. Tomorrow, Saturday, I'll be uploading an interview with Julia Turansky. She is from Brave the World blog. And if you are on the X22Report.com email alert system, you'll get emailed. If you signed up to the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel, you should receive an email from YouTube. If not, come right over to the YouTube channel, type in X22 Report Spotlight. It'll bring you right to the video. If not, you can come over to the X22Report.com site, scroll down a little bit, you'll see the interview on the right-hand side. Or if you're looking at the news site, which is newssentinel.com, you will see the video there. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Here in the United States, it looks like through a recent Rasmussen poll, 33% of Americans believe it's time for the states to openly defy the feds. And Americans right now support the states by saying, listen, the Fed is out of control, and the states should exercise their 10th Amendment rights and ignore the federal rulings because they are in violation of the Constitution. Now, the federal government likes us to believe that the Supreme Court decides what's constitutional and what's not constitutional. And the Founding Fathers, they didn't set it up this way. Now, the federal judiciary has long built this fiction that they are the sole and final arbiter of what is constitutional and what is not constitutional. And they base this upon the Supremacy Clause, which is Article 6, Paragraph 2 of the U.S. Constitution. They claim that Article 6, Paragraph 2 grants the Supreme Court supremacy to determine whether laws are constitutional or unconstitutional. And the funny thing about this is when you actually take the time to read Article 6, Paragraph 2, you realize that the Supreme Court isn't even mentioned there whatsoever. In fact, federal courts aren't even mentioned. What is mentioned and is declared to have supremacy is the U.S. Constitution itself and all laws made in accordance therewith. In other words, America's founding fathers did not establish a judicial supremacy as the Supreme Court is trying to make us believe. Rather, they established constitutional supremacy. All magistrates in America, whether federal, state, county, or local, did not take an oath of subservience to the federal government, nor the federal judiciary. Rather, they took an oath to the Constitution. Jefferson said, "You seem to consider the judges as the ultimate arbiters of all constitutional questions." A very dangerous doctrine indeed, and one which would place us under the despotism of oligarchy. Jefferson had previously warned Charles Hammond in 1821, "The germ of dissolution of our federal government is in the constitution of the federal judiciary, an irresponsible body working like gravity by the night and by day, gaining a little today and a little tomorrow, and advancing its noiseless step like a thief over the field of jurisdiction until all shall be usurped." He also wrote, at the establishment of our constitutions, the judiciary bodies were supposed to be the most helpless and harmless members of the government. But guess what? It is the opposite. The federal government was supposed to be carrying out the orders of the people, of the Congress. And things have been flip-flopped around today. The people decide what is constitutional and what is unconstitutional, not the government. Remember that. The government obeys what we, the people, want. The problem comes in when the central bank takes control. Because why is the central bank in power? What does the Federal Reserve add to the United States? Nothing. people say, well, they can create money. Well, in the Constitution, the government is allowed to create money. So what exactly does the Federal Reserve do? What do the central bankers do to help the countries? They do nothing. They are a private corporation, separate from the governments. They're not doing anything. So why do they stay in power? What possible reason would our government employees keep them in power? Well, the only reason I can think is that the central bankers, since they have the ability to create money, they have the ability to make these government employees very, very wealthy. And it looks like they're paying them off. And since the central bank is now giving the order is not in the best interest of the people. It is in the best interest of themselves. And this is why we have the problem today. Now, Obama, he has to address the encryption problem. Why? Because there was a petition that was placed on Obama's website, on, I should say, the website for the White House, and the petition reached 100,000 signatures in 30 days. And they're saying now Obama, his administration, has to publicly affirm how they feel about strong encryption. And of course, he's always been backing away from this. We know the FBI doesn't want encryption. And like I said in the past, every single person needs to protect their information. You protect your home by locking it up with keys. You lock up your weapons. You lock up your valuables. You need to do the same thing with your electronic data. There's no reason to give the keys to the government. And whatever you do, lock it up. You can use Block It Pocket at blockitpocket.com. It's the sleeves that are interwoven with metals like silver, copper to block the signals of your phone, your credit cards. You can use encryption. I have it on the X22Report.com site. On the right-hand side, there is PyroCrypt, which is an open source code, which you can encrypt any message. You can use email encryption. You can use Start Page to do your searches so Google can't track you. You can use proxy servers to hide where your location is. So there are many different ways to do this. And we should continually do this to make it harder and harder for the government, because it sends a message that, you know something, you can't have my information. It's in violation of the Fourth Amendment. Now, it looks like the European Parliament might have thrown a wrench into the case against Edward Snowden. And the majority of the European Parliament right now, they have voted in favor of asking the constituent states to grant protection now to the whistleblower. They have urged EU member states to drop any criminal charges against Edward Snowden and grant him protection, and consequently prevent extradition or rendition by third parties. And of course, you know, the United States wants him back. They want to make an example out of him. Most likely we'll probably never see him again if he was brought into the United States. And this is why he is out of the United States, because the United States sees him as a traitor. And now the rest of the world is saying, you know something, maybe he isn't a traitor. Maybe he opened our eyes to what was really going on here. Actually, the traitors are the government employees who lied to the people when asked, are you spying on the American people? And the answer was no. And they were hiding this from a lot of the congressmen, congresswomen, and they were violating the Fourth Amendment. Those are the traitors. They are the traitors to the Constitution, to the people of the United States. Edward Snowden was out there trying to tell people, look what your government is doing. They're lying to you and they're spying on you. Now, FBI Director James Comey is blaming citizens with cameras for the increase in violent crime. Now, he's saying that all this filming of the police, this is just making it worse because these videos go viral and now people are taking sides. People are against the police. No, what's happening is where the police are getting their training and how they're viewing the population is what the problem is, because the filming is just that, the filming. The acts are committed by the police. Now, is every police officer doing this? Absolutely not. I know many police officers that are intertwined in the community. They are not like this whatsoever. They have their children going to the same schools. But there are certain areas where things are out of hand. And instead of finding out what the issue is, they're blaming people with cameras because you know what this is. They don't want certain things filmed and sent onto the internet. And these things were always happening. It's just now that people can actually see what's going on. Now, out in Libya, we see there are unidentified planes once again carrying out airstrikes in Libya, in the city of Sirte, and they're targeting the oil infrastructure, and they're saying this is where the Islamic State is. Now, of course, we know the Islamic State is not there, because we know it's the proxy army for the United States government central bankers. We know it is the people that are maintaining control of the oil infrastructures. And of course, these are all from unidentified planes. No one's taking responsibility for this, and this has been going on quite often. And we know that the talks have broken down in Libya. They're still trying to piece it together. And of course, as we know, John Kerry said, if there's no peace by October 20th, all bets are off. And here we are in October 30th, and we see that things are not getting better there. It's getting worse. And the United States is getting ready, prepared to do something in Libya. Now, will it be U.S. forces? Most likely not. They'll probably use a proxy army. As we know, they're taking a lot of the Islamic State and transporting them out of Syria, bringing them into Yemen and Libya. So they are planning something here. Now, the United States is continually trying to blame Russia for the strikes in Syria, saying they've hit civilians, they hit hospitals. And of course, Russia is out there saying, please prove it. Show us your evidence. We did not do this. And the U.S. came up with this response. They are basing their allegations on press reporting and unconfirmed accounts from civil society groups. And ask, well, can you give us more information about this? And Kirby said, I tell you that we have some other operational information that leads us to believe that Russian targeting has not only been focused on the Islamic State, but has in fact caused collateral damage and some civilian casualties, including civilian infrastructure. When asked to offer something more solid in terms of evidence that would support his beliefs, Kirby said, no, I'm not going to talk about that anymore. This is what's happening. They have absolutely no evidence whatsoever. This is complete propaganda. It's unconfirmed reports. It's press reporting from the Syrian Observatory, which is the one guy living in a bedroom in the country of England. And he is reporting on what's going on in Syria, who, by the way, hasn't been back in Syria in 15 years. And nothing can be confirmed right now. So the Red Cross was asked, did Russia bomb a hospital? And the Red Cross personnel on the ground in Syria could not confirm whether any airstrikes allegedly delivered by Russian jets had struck hospitals. Now, the medical staff from Médecins Sans Frontières have made no claims that their hospitals were struck by Russian airstrikes. They're saying, yes, there were other hospitals that were hit, but we don't know who actually did it. Now, you have to remember, the United States and the coalition forces were in there before Russia. They were hitting civilians. They were hitting civilian infrastructure targets. And they were not hitting the Islamic State. Now, it looks like the United States is trying to cover up everything that they've done. We see Obama, Kerry. They are in Vienna, or actually John Kerry is in Vienna. And they are with Iran, Syria, Russia, coalition forces, trying to come up with some type of an agreement in Syria, some type of ceasefire agreement. And we know when the United States deals with any type of ceasefire, it's their way and that's it. So we're going to have to wait to see how this turns out. Now, Russia is reporting that they have over 1,600 terror targets destroyed in 1 month in their operations, and they're pushing the Islamic State out of the country. And they're saying that no country can use military force inside Syria without the government approval of Syria. So the United States bringing in special op teams into Syria is not allowed. They are invading a sovereign country. China and Russia right now are expanding cooperation in fighting against terrorism. And you know what terrorism this is. United States is a state sponsor of terrorism. They've done this in Yemen, Libya, Venezuela, Argentina, Brazil, Ukraine. You name it, and Iraq and Syria. They've done it. They created Al-Qaeda. They created the Islamic State. They created Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram. It's all part of the same thing. And now the message comes out that they're sending in a special ops team of 20 to 30 special forces to go into Syria, which again is not allowed. It's a sovereign country. Now the question is, why such a small group going in there? What are they actually doing in there? Well, we know Russia has been pushing back the Islamic State. We know that they are making more and more gains, pushing them out east. And the United States is getting very worried because there is a cache of intelligence in certain locations that prove the Islamic State was working for the U.S. government. And they're sending in these special teams to take out certain individuals from the Islamic State so they don't talk. And they're trying to get as much of the intelligence out of this area to clean up their mess. We also have to watch out to see if they're going to put a hit on Assad. So we see a lot of things happening right now. And we see the United States is getting very nervous. And the thing is, the United States has been in combat in Iraq and Syria on the ground for a very long time. All these advisors, they're not advisors. The Pentagon admitted it. They're in combat. And they have been for a very long time. Actually, Congress was not informed that they were in combat. And a lot of the senators, the Congress employees, they're very upset about this. That they were not informed whatsoever that we were in combat once again in Iraq and in Syria, which is a sovereign country. And right now, the entire military operation against the Islamic State is really non-existent. We were never fighting the Islamic State. We were using them, I should say the U.S. government central bankers were using them to get Assad. And now it's their mission to cover this up. Now remember, the United States central bankers, their backs are against the wall right now. They're getting nervous. And when they get nervous and they have no other choice, they do something like a false flag event to convince everyone they need to get into Syria, to get into Iran, to start the war with Russia. And this is what we've been looking at right now, because we understand they need to get into Syria. They want that pipeline built through Syria to Europe to take the natural gas dependency away from Russia, because they understand they need Europe independent. Because when the war starts, they don't want Russia shutting off the gas. And this is why they've been trying so hard to do this. This has been planned out for a long time. Of course, the other agenda is they thought they'd be able to prop up the system for a little while longer to get the future plans all laid out. But now we're running out of time. Things are drastically falling apart. Russia is in there. Their initial plans of setting this terrorism organization up there to take out Assad is completely falling apart. Just like the sarin gas tactic they used back in 2013. Here is another plan not going well, and they're running out of plans here. And this is why we are approaching the time when we're going to see a false flag event. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.